Something happened recently that you are still turning over. Not a big moment. Not the conversation you have been rehearsing in your head for months. The one where everything finally comes out and the air clears and you both finally say what is real. Not that. Something smaller. Something that arrived sideways without warning in the middle of something that was supposed to be ordinary or low stakes or nothing at all. Something was said, maybe by him, maybe by you. Maybe by both of you in the same breath, the same moment, the same sentence that neither of you planned. And the second it happened, you felt it. That slight freeze, that internal shift of someone who just heard something that did not fit the script, something that came from underneath the management, underneath the careful version of him that only lets out exactly what he intends. Something that arrived before the filter could catch it. And now you are here, a few hours later or a few days later. Still sitting with it, still trying to work out what it means, still noticing the way your chest does something specific when you replay it. Because here's what you understood in that moment, even if you could not put language to it then. Unplanned words are the only true ones. Everything else is performance. Everything else is strategy. Everything else is the version of communication that humans deploy when they are protecting something, managing something, trying to control the outcome of something. The planned words, the careful words, the measured, reviewed, considered words. Those tell you what someone wants you to believe, but the words that slip out, the ones that come before the guard can come up, the ones that appear in the space between what someone intended to say and what their actual interior said instead, those are the ones that tell you what is real, and something real just entered the space between you. If something unscripted was said recently, something that surprised both of you or surprised even him, leave a like and subscribe so you stay connected. Drop. I heard what was real in the comments. Because what just happened between you is not an accident. Venus entering Gemini this week, exact conjunction with Uranus, is the cosmic mechanism underneath exactly this, and the script is going to walk you through all of it. But before we go any further, I want to put something directly in your hands. Because if you're at the place this script is describing, you are already past the general information stage. You have been in this long enough to have a specific connection, a specific history, a specific architecture to what is between you. And what you actually need right now is not another explanation of twin flames in general. You need someone to look at your specific birth chart, your specific moment in this journey, and tell you what the universe is doing with your particular connection right now. You can now order a twin flame union personal reading. Your name, your date of birth, your exact time of birth, your place and country of birth. Those 4 pieces of information are the foundation. What lands in your inbox is a personal audio reading and a detailed written PDF report built just for you, where you actually are in your journey right now. What karmic patterns have been running beneath the surface? What is being orchestrated in the space between you and him? What your soul contract with this person truly means beyond the push and pull and the silence and the longing. And what your next phase actually looks like from the cosmic level. This is not a general reading. This is yours. The link is in the description if you are ready for a map that was made for your exact coordinates. Let us start with what is happening cosmetically, so you understand the mechanism underneath what just occurred. On April 23, 2026, Venus leaves Taurus and enters Gemini. And she does not enter alone. She enters in an exact conjunction with Uranus, which at this point is also in the final degree of Taurus, on the threshold of Gemini itself. This is a charged threshold crossing, not a gentle sign change, a rupture point. Venus is the planet of love, connection, and receptivity. She governs what we want, what we find beautiful, what we are willing to be vulnerable about. In Taurus, she has been deep and slow and earthbound. Taurus Venus is love that holds on. Love that does not rush. Love that endures through silence because it is constitutionally incapable of cutting and running. It is fixed. It is loyal to the point of stubbornness. In Gemini, Venus becomes something entirely different. Gemini is the sign of the mind, of language, of communication, of the nervous system of connection. It is the part of us that thinks faster than it speaks, that makes connections between ideas, that is endlessly curious about what the other person is actually experiencing. Gemini Venus wants to know, wants to ask, wants to say the thing that has been hovering just behind the teeth. And Uranus is the planet of sudden disruption, of the unexpected, of what breaks through when a pattern has been held in tension long enough that something finally gives. Venus conjunct Uranus entering Gemini is the exact cosmic signature of the unscripted word. It is the moment when the management breaks, when the careful, measured, controlled version of communication finally gets disrupted by what is actually there underneath it. Uranus does not ask permission. It does not wait for the right moment or the prepared speech. It breaks through when it is ready, when the pressure behind something has built past the point where containment is possible. And in a twin flame connection, this week, that means something very specific. The words he has been holding back are closer to the surface than they have been in months. He has won. You may not realize this, but he does. A version of what he would say if he were going to say something. He has run it through his mind in the small hours of the morning, in the car, in that particular quiet that arrives after the distraction wears thin and the real thing is still sitting there, unmoved, waiting. He has edited it. He has practiced it. He has delivered it to an imagined version of you in his head and watched how it lands and then pulled it back and revised. He has constructed it so carefully that the original feeling underneath it has almost been smoothed out of it. Almost. This is not unique to him. This is what humans do with feelings that scare them. They translate the raw feeling into language, and in the act of translating, they begin editing. What is too vulnerable gets softened. What is too revealing gets buried inside something that looks more neutral. What is too direct gets surrounded by enough other words that the center of it is obscured. The divine masculine, particularly the avoidant divine masculine in a twin flame separation, is extraordinary at this. The scripts he runs in his head are immaculate. They say just enough and not too much. They gesture in the direction of what is real without actually landing there. They are constructed to protect him from the terrifying possibility of full exposure. And then Venus conjunct Uranus breaks through, and something comes out sideways, and the script goes completely out the window. This is what happened recently, or what is about to. The moment when the carefully managed version of him produced something he did not intend to produce. Something true slipped out. There is a psychological concept that sits at the center of what he is experiencing, and it is called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the state of holding two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. The mental and emotional discomfort that arises when what you believe, or what you tell yourself you believe, is in direct conflict with what you feel, what you do, or what occasionally slips out of you when you are not carefully managing the narrative. He has a story he tells himself about this connection. He has held it together with great internal effort. The story probably goes something like this. It was not the right time, or it was not meant to be, or the distance is necessary, or he needs to focus on himself, or she is better off without the version of him he currently is. The story has a logic to it. He can follow the logic when he needs to. He has followed it through months of silence and distance, and the particular kind of absence that reads to the outside world like he has moved on. But the story is not what he feels. And cognitive dissonance does not allow the gap between what you tell yourself and what you actually feel to stay comfortable indefinitely. The tension builds, the contradictions accumulate. The moments when you almost feel fine about the story are interrupted by the moments when the truth of what you actually carry comes surging back up, unasked for, inconvenient, completely immune to the rational argument you have been constructing around it. What happens in those moments of buildup is that the truth looks for a pressure release valve. And the pressure release valve is often language. The thing he says in the middle of another conversation. The text he sends at an hour when his defenses are lower. The offhand comment that has more weight in it than an offhand comment should. The question he asks that is not actually the question he is asking. The thing he says that makes you look at your phone or look at him and think, wait, where did that come from? That is not an accident. That is cognitive dissonance finding its release. That is the truth leaking out around the edges of the story he has been trying to keep sealed. Leon Festinger, who developed the theory of cognitive dissonance in the 1950s, originally studied people who held beliefs that directly contradicted observable evidence. What he found was that the human mind does not simply update when confronted with contradictory information. It goes to extraordinary lengths to protect the existing belief structure first. It rationalizes. It compartmentalizes. It recruits additional supporting arguments. It looks for ways to dismiss the contradicting evidence rather than revise the story. The divine masculine in a twin flame separation is doing exactly this. The evidence that contradicts his story is everywhere. It is in the way he cannot stop thinking about her. It is in the way other relationships feel like pale imitations of something he cannot quite name. It is in the physical sensation that arrives when he hears a particular song or catches a particular scent or sees something that would have made her laugh. It is in the dreams he does not tell anyone about. The evidence is mounting. The story is under increasing pressure. And under increasing pressure, the pressure release valve activates more frequently. This is why the unscripted moment is happening now and not 6 months ago. 6 months ago, his cognitive dissonance management was more effective. The story was newer, the rationalizations were fresher, the distance between them felt more like a choice and less like a sustained act of will. Now, after months of holding the story against the tide of what he actually carries, the management is requiring more energy than he has readily available. The gaps are showing. The seams are visible. What comes out in those unguarded moments is not an anomaly. It is the underlying truth of what he has been working to contain. And you, having heard it, are now holding information that his managed exterior was specifically designed to keep you from having. You felt it in your body before your mind had caught up. That is worth understanding because the body does not editorialize. It does not add narrative or interpretation. It simply responds to what is real. And the response you felt when that unscripted thing was said. That internal lurch. That intake of breath. That stillness that came over you for just a second. That was your body recognizing something true, not hope. That is different from what this was. Hope has a slightly desperate quality to it. Hope reaches toward something. What this was is closer to recognition. The thing you feel when something you already knew, somewhere below the conscious level, finally makes itself visible above the surface. You already knew that the story he was telling, the distance, the silence, the absence, was not the full story. You knew it the way you know things you cannot prove but cannot unfeel. And then something unscripted arrived, and your body said, There it is. That is the thing I have been sensing underneath all the management. That recognition is important. It is not the same as reunion. It is not a guarantee of anything. But it is confirmation that what you have been carrying about this connection is not something you invented. What you feel between you is real enough to leak through the most carefully constructed wall he has built around it. This part matters. Because what happens in the aftermath of the unscripted moment is often the thing that confuses the divine feminine the most. She hears the thing that slipped through. She feels her body register it as true. And then, sometimes in the very next moment, sometimes over the next few hours or days, he pulls back. Not away from her, exactly. Away from the thing that came out. He qualifies it. He makes a joke. He follows it with something more neutral. He goes quiet in a way that does not quite match the warmth of what was just said. He puts distance between himself and the unguarded moment as quickly and efficiently as he can manage. And she watches this happen and wonders if she imagined the whole thing. She did not. What she is watching is the cognitive dissonance response to the leak. The moment when the carefully held story gets briefly pierced by something real, and then the system moves immediately to close the gap, to reassert the narrative, to get back behind the wall that just, for a moment, failed. This is not manipulation. It is not cruelty. It is not him playing games or sending mixed signals for the pleasure of keeping her off balance. It is the mechanics of a person who has organized their survival around a story and who feels genuinely threatened when that story momentarily breaks. Think about what that story has been doing for him. It has been allowing him to function. It has been the structure around which he has organized his daily life, his sense of himself, his ability to go through the motions of his regular existence without being leveled by the full weight of what he actually feels. The story is not just a lie he is telling you. It is a coping mechanism that is holding his interior together. When the story breaks, even for a moment, even through a single unguarded word, the experience from the inside is closer to a threat response than a relief. The part of him that has been maintaining the story goes into immediate repair mode. Reassert the distance. Reestablish the narrative. Get back to safe ground before the exposure becomes complete. The divine masculine in the avoidant pattern pulls back not because he does not feel what the unguarded moment revealed. He pulls back because he felt it so completely, so undeniably, that the feeling itself became the threat. Vulnerability of that depth, to someone who has organized his survival around emotional containment, does not feel like intimacy. It feels like danger. She is not the danger. What she represents is, because what she represents is the full version of himself that he is most afraid to inhabit. The self that needs. The self that loves in a way that cannot be managed or controlled or safely contained behind a wall of distance and rationalization. The self that would have to become completely visible to step into what this connection is actually asking for. The wall going back up after the unguarded moment does not erase the unguarded moment. What came out came from somewhere, and what came from somewhere is still there. The Twin Flame Journey Tracker and Progress Workbook exists for exactly the phase you are in right now. Because here is what happens in pre-union tension. The moments start accumulating. The unscripted exchange, the pullback, the quiet that follows, the next unexpected contact, the thing you felt in your body that you have not told anyone. These moments pile up, and without a way to track them, they start to blur. You lose the thread. You forget that the thing that happened 6 weeks ago and the thing that happened last week and what just happened are all part of the same movement, and then you wonder if anything is actually moving at all. This 39-page PDF workbook is a tracking system for exactly this. A stage journey tracker that shows you where you actually are and allows you to watch yourself move through the stages month by month. A synchronicity log so the 11:11 moments and the signs and the unexpected contacts do not get lost inside the general noise of your life. A daily self-love checklist that keeps you the focus and not just the waiting. Weekly reflections that help you spot patterns you would miss otherwise. Monthly reviews that show you your own transformation in black and white, so you can see it clearly instead of just feeling it vaguely. The link is in the description if you are ready to stop guessing and start tracking what is actually happening. Now, what Venus into Gemini is doing to the space between you. Gemini rules communication and the nervous system of connection. It rules the things that pass between two people in the air, in tone, in what is said and what is not said, and what both people know is being communicated even when no one has put it directly into language. Gemini is the sign most attuned to the subtext, to what is happening underneath what appears on the surface. Venus in Gemini means the field between you right now is extraordinarily sensitive to language, to words, to the specific frequency of communication in a way that it has not been recently. The things said and unsaid between you right now are carrying more charge than usual, more information, more of the real thing than either of you might be fully conscious of. And Uranus conjunct this Venus means that the charge is looking for somewhere to discharge. The Uranian energy is electrically disruptive. It is the planet associated with sudden reversals, with the unexpected, with what breaks through when a pattern has been held in a fixed position long enough that something has to give. A twin flame connection in the pre-union tension phase is, by definition, a system where enormous amounts of energy have been held in a fixed pattern for a long time. The separation holding its shape, the feeling staying below the stated surface, the real dynamic maintained in the subterranean space that neither person fully acknowledges. Uranus conjunct Venus in the sign of communication is direct pressure applied to exactly that subterranean layer. Words are getting out this week that would not have gotten out last month. There is a particular quality to the unscripted exchange that makes it different from every other moment in a twin flame separation. It is irrevocable. The silence can be maintained. The distance can be sustained. The story about what this is and is not can be held in place for months, years, with enough will and enough avoidance and enough strategic deployment of distraction. A person can choose not to reach out. They can choose not to respond. They can choose to let the space between them remain ambiguous and undefined indefinitely, as long as nothing specific is said. But once something specific is said, you cannot unsay it. The unguarded word creates a before and an after. It moves into the air between you and it stays there. Both of you now know it was said. Both of you now carry the knowledge of what came out of the unguarded moment. The gap in his story has been made visible. The real feeling underneath the management has been given for a second, a voice. And a voice, once given to something, is very difficult to take away entirely. He may try. He may go quiet. He may pull back. He may revert to the behavior that makes it look like the unguarded moment did not happen. But the unguarded moment happened. It is in the record between you now. It lives in the body of the connection in a way that the managed version of him cannot entirely reach. From a psychological standpoint, what the unscripted exchange does is disrupt the cognitive dissonance at its most foundational level. The cognitive dissonance was working as long as the gap between his story and his actual feelings remained invisible. As long as what he felt stayed below the surface and only his stated narrative was available for both of them to orient toward, the story could hold. His story and her reality were two different tracks, and the distance between those tracks allowed him to maintain the narrative that what was between them was not what it actually is. But an unscripted word puts something from his interior into the external record. It makes the gap visible. And once the gap is visible, once both parties have seen the thing that came through before the guard could catch it, the story becomes significantly harder to maintain with the same level of conviction. This is what is happening in the space between you this week. Not a reunion. Not a sudden resolution. Something more precise and more foundational than either of those things. A crack in the story he has been telling himself about this connection. And cracks, once opened, do not close on their own. Here is what does not serve you. Chasing the unguarded moment. Bringing it up directly. Asking him about it. Replaying it out loud to him to confirm that it meant what you think it meant. Pressing on the thing that came through before he could stop it. The cognitive dissonance mechanism is sensitive. When pressure is applied directly to the crack, the defense system responds by reinforcing the wall. The more direct attention is drawn to the moment of vulnerability, the more motivated the avoidant part of him becomes to explain it away, recontextualize it, minimize it, or go silent until the moment has passed. What serves you is doing something that probably runs counter to every instinct you have right now. Let it land, not in him necessarily, in you. Let the information of that unguarded moment settle into your own system as confirmation of what you have already known. Let it do the work it is designed to do inside the space of this connection. Stop trying to extract from it more certainty than it is ready to give. The certainty is already there. You felt it in your body in the second after it was said. Your body does not need more evidence. What you do with that certainty matters more than anything he does next. And what you do with that certainty is not about managing him. It is not about engineering the next interaction, or crafting the exact right response, or figuring out the strategic move that will encourage more of the same. The mind that goes immediately to strategy in the aftermath of an unguarded moment is the part of you that is still trying to control the outcome. That part means well. It is trying to protect you from the exposure of having wanted something this badly and having it not arrive on your schedule. But the strategic mind and the unguarded moment are not compatible. The unguarded moment happened in the space outside strategy. It happened in the frequency of what is real. And what is real can only be met with more of the real. Which means more of you. More of the specific version of you that showed up enough in this connection to crack his story in the first place. There is something worth sitting with about that. The fact that he had an unguarded moment in your proximity, whether that proximity was physical or energetic or through some form of communication, the fact that the thing came out near you and because of you says something about what your energy field is doing to the cognitive dissonance he has been maintaining. You did not manufacture the unguarded moment by being strategically lovable or energetically perfect or vibrationally aligned in some performed way. You were simply being real in a way that made the gap between his story and his reality too visible to ignore for just a second. That is not something you can reverse or replicate on command. It is just the natural output of a woman who has done the genuine work of becoming more herself through the course of this separation. You became more real. And reality meeting someone else's performance exposes the performance. This is not something to weaponize or manipulate or use. It is just the truth of what has been happening between you. And it is the thing that will continue to apply pressure to the gap between what he says and what he feels for as long as you continue becoming more honest about your own interior. Let that land in you as information, then keep going. Venus in Gemini for the coming weeks means the field between you is going to remain electrically sensitive to communication. More unscripted moments are possible. More instances of the subtext making itself visible. More of what is actually there between you finding ways to surface through the managed exterior. Uranus in Gemini beginning its long transit the first time in 84 years means this disruption of old communication patterns is not a one-week phenomenon. This is a longer arc of upheaval in how people communicate, in what they allow themselves to say, in the patterns of suppression and silence that have been maintained because they were the path of least resistance. The divine masculine, who has been maintaining a story that no longer matches his interior, is living inside a larger collective disruption of exactly that pattern. The pressure toward authenticity is not just internal, it is in the field. It is in the collective frequency that everyone is moving through right now. What this means practically is that the period between now and what comes next is one of increasing communication pressure. Things that have not been said are moving toward expression. Things that have been managed are moving toward visibility. The crack that appeared in his story this week is not an isolated incident. It is the beginning of a longer pattern of his interior finding ways to make itself known despite the management. Uranus in a new sign for a 7-year cycle is not subtle. It does not politely ask the existing patterns to step aside. It disrupts them. It electrifies the field. It applies pressure to everything that has been held in suppression until the pressure exceeds the capacity to maintain the suppression. And in Gemini, it does all of this specifically through language, through communication, through the words that surface from underneath the planned ones. He is not going to find it easier to maintain the story. Not this week and not for the months ahead. The energetic current of this transit runs exactly counter to the kind of managed silence the avoidant divine masculine has been using to maintain the gap between you. The pressure is moving in the direction of honesty, of the unscripted thing, of what comes out when the management is tired and the feeling is still there, and the gap between what he tells himself and what he actually lives inside becomes too wide to paper over with another round of rationalization. You do not have to do anything with this except stay in your own growth. Stay honest. Stay in your own evolution. Keep the frequency of your own authenticity high, because authenticity in one person in a connection is contagious. It is one of the mechanisms the twin flame dynamic is designed to use. The whole architecture of this kind of connection is built around the way one person's genuine expansion ripples through the energetic field of the connection and creates conditions that make the other person's continued suppression increasingly difficult to sustain. She becomes more real. He becomes less able to maintain the unreal version of himself he's been deploying in the space between them. This is not a guarantee of a particular outcome or timeline. It is an honest description of the energetic mechanics of where this is going. The unscripted exchange was not a one-off moment of cosmic coincidence. It was a signal that what has been building underneath the management is getting close to the surface. And what is that close to the surface does not usually stay down for very much longer. Hold that, not with desperation, not with expectation, with the specific, grounded, quiet certainty of someone who heard something real and recognized it for exactly what it was. You know you heard, you know what you felt in your body in the second after it was said. That is not nothing. That is the entire story in a single unguarded moment telling you what is true.